This podcast is for educational purposes. Our guests aren't scripted and are free to speak their minds. Therefore, their views and opinions don't necessarily reflect those of BridgeBio Pharma. Also, your doctor is your best source of information about any symptoms you might be experiencing. Please consult a medical care professional about any health questions and concerns. Now, we hope you enjoy the podcast.
Hi, and welcome to On Rare, a rare disease podcast produced by BridgeBio, a biotech company that focuses on developing treatments for rare diseases. I'm your host, Mandy Rohrig, a member of the Patient Advocacy team, and I'm joined by my colleague and friend, David Rintell.
Hi, Mandy. Good to see you. Always a pleasure.
And we are excited because we get to speak with Ashley, who lives with a condition called erythropoietic protoporphyria, or EPP. It's a condition that involves severe pain upon exposure to sunlight. But Ashley's story is especially unique, so we'll look forward to hearing her.
Yeah, but first, let's hear from Dr. Pete Schmidt. He's the Chief Medical Officer of the Portal program. Portal works on developing investigational treatments for EPP. It is part of Gondola Bio, which is a sibling company to BridgeBio. Pete, welcome to On Rare.
Thank you, David.
I guess the first question is when someone experiences EPP, what is it like for them?
There are actually two distinct conditions under the EPP umbrella. So we have, as you mentioned, erythropoietic protoporphyria. We also have X-linked protoporphyria. The genetic causes of these conditions are distinct, but the symptoms that the patients experience are identical. Interestingly, the end result of those changes in biology is a buildup of the exact same compound, which we call protoporphyrin 9.
Protoporphyrin 9. So when someone has a buildup of protoporphyrin 9, what is the impact?
So as this protoporphyrin 9 circulates in the blood, much of it can be deposited in the skin, specifically in the blood vessels of the skin. When it's in the skin, it's generally harmless. It doesn't seem to do any damage over time. The problem is when the skin is exposed to visible light, most notably sunlight, but also some forms of indoor light, that molecule explodes, for lack of a better word. And when it does so, it causes severe damage to the blood vessels and the skin, resulting in inflammation and intense pain. And the pain can last for a week, sometimes even more. So long after the sun exposure has occurred, It's very difficult to treat.
So if damage is caused to the blood vessels that are in the skin, people with EPP need to avoid sunlight and sometimes other forms of artificial light as well.
That's exactly right.
So you mentioned it affects the superficial vessels. Does it also impact vessels deeper in the body, say organs and muscles, etc.?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it seems that this molecule, this PP9, doesn't interact with much until it's exposed to light. So it's really only in those superficial areas, the skin, where it can react with light and cause the symptoms I mentioned. The other place, that second branch of symptoms, is the liver. And what happens is PP9 doesn't dissolve well in water, doesn't dissolve well in blood. So it's what we call a hydrophobic molecule. And when it gets into the liver says, this is an unusual molecule, let's get rid of it. It pumps it out, and the liver elimination system is through the bile. Bile is part of our digestive juices, helps us digest our food in the intestines. Most of us have heard of the gallbladder. That's where a lot of the bile is stored. So what happens is this molecule, because it can't dissolve, it forms these crystals, almost like stone, that block the bile tubes and can lead to backup of those digestive juices into the liver itself. Over time, you can imagine this causes liver damage, and that liver damage can be very severe. It also causes complications with the gallbladder, and oftentimes need to have their gallbladder removed.
So it's not necessarily that the gallbladder is not working properly. It clogs the entire system and then damages the liver.
It's a clog and a backup system. That's exactly it.
What is the consequence of this congestion that's happening in the liver and the gallbladder?
Yeah, That's probably one of the most challenging aspects of managing EPP-related liver disease is there's no really reliable treatment yet. There are a bunch of compounds in research, but nothing to reliably treat that buildup of PP9 yet. And so a lot of the management is just kind of watchful waiting. So we check their liver enzymes annually, their other liver function tests. Oftentimes they get ultrasounds of the liver, which can test liver scarring. If the liver gets scarred enough, it can't do its functions, and we have to transplant. We take a liver from a deceased donor, we take out the patient's liver, and we swap them.
So, Pete, a liver transplant is serious surgery, and then the person will still have EPP. Then is the transplanted liver also susceptible to the same kind of blockages?
Both excellent points. As a former surgeon and anesthesiologist, liver transplant is one of the most intense surgeries that we perform. Your other point is absolutely true. It is not curative for EPP to have a liver transplant. And so immediately afterwards, we monitor the new liver and make sure that that damage isn't recurring. But there have been very unfortunate patients who have needed another liver or are headed towards another liver transplant.
So, Pete, how long do people typically experience this slow decline in liver function before they are required to have a transplant? I understand that sometimes people do well, and then they hit this cliff.
That's absolutely true. So highly, highly variable. The majority of patients with EPP or XLP will do fine from a liver standpoint. They may have slightly elevated liver enzymes, but it's tracked over the course of a lifetime, and generally they do just fine. A small minority experience exactly what you described, where at any age, there seems to be something that triggers this feedback spiral.
We're very appreciative of you breaking down EPP in a way that is understandable, and you have been masterful.
Oh, good. Thank you, David and Mandy, so much for having me and letting me speak about this very challenging condition.
Well, hi, Ashley. Welcome to On Rare Podcast. We're delighted to have you.
So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I want to also welcome you, Ashley, and thank you very much for sharing your story with us. Can we just start with you telling us a little bit about yourself and your life?
Yeah. So my name's Ashley. I'm 42, maybe 43. I'm married. I have 2 kids, a very grown one who is just turned 22, my son, and I have an almost 11-year-old daughter who keeps me very busy with her dance and softball schedule. Mm-hmm. I live in Southeast Massachusetts with my husband.
So what was the first time that you experienced something that you now connect to EPP?
I was very young. My earliest memories that I had were probably 3, 4, 5-ish. I remember being at home in my living room and just being in excruciating pain. We had been outside earlier that day, and I remember my dad trying to rub like aloe on my skin and just like cool compresses. And I remember wearing his big white t-shirt. Even that was painful on my skin.
Oh, wow. That goes pretty far back and a pretty painful experience and painful memory.
Very. It's an excruciating pain that I would not wish on my worst enemy ever.
Ashley, how would you describe the pain?
Oh, burning from the inside out. It felt like I was on fire. It's such an intense burning pain. It's almost like an acid burn. Not that I've ever been burned by acid, but I feel like if that would be a way to describe it, because it's not just on fire. It's a very sharp, stabbing, prickly, horrific experience.
Yeah. How long did it take for that intense burning sensation to go away when you were a child?
Even as an adult, because it still happens the same way, essentially. So typically when I am in like a full blown, I have done too much exposure and it's all downhill from here, it is typically minimum 48 hours, sometimes longer, of just the excruciating pain part. But then it still hurts after that. So from start to finish, I'm looking at least a week.
Oh, boy.
And actually, I'm going to guess that your parents took you to your pediatrician to find out why you were having so much pain? Or do you remember anything from those early visits?
Not a lot from the early visits. I know we had been to a lot of doctors when I was younger.
Uh-huh.
A lot of the doctors would say, oh, you're allergic to the sun or you're sensitive to the sun. Try this sunscreen, stay inside during, 10
Mm-hmm.
and 2, shade. But no one ever tried to get to the root cause or try and figure it out. It was always just, oh, well, stay inside.
So you changed your lifestyle a lot.
You would think the smart thing would have been to like not continue to go outside. I'm really stubborn, and I think part of being young but also undiagnosed in that time, because I didn't actually receive my diagnosis until right after my 40th birthday.
Oh, my.
I received my official diagnosis.
Wow.
So, in my not formed brain as a younger person, kind of oddly kept hoping that this was like a one off situation and it wouldn't happen again.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are times where my exposure limits are drastically shorter than others. And we could never really kind of figure out how or why, like why one day would be better and one day wouldn't be. And so I just continued to try it anyway and often ended up in a real bad situation. I think part of me just wanted to be like everybody else and be
Mm-hmm.
normal and be able to go and do those things. So I tried to my own demise many times.
Actually, we have heard from other people living in the EPP that it took a long time to get a diagnosis. Most of the healthcare providers didn't seem to be aware of porphyria or EPP or didn't consider it as a possibility. So it sounds like that was your experience as well.
Yes. Yeah. I would say that every doctor I've ever been to before almost dying had no idea what porphyria was, thought to test for it, even after diagnosis, because I tell everybody about it. If I meet you, you're going to find out about porphyria, whether you like it or not. Even doctors
Yeah.
that I encounter now, nurses that I encounter now, even they don't know much about it. There's definitely not enough talking about it in the medical community.
I have to ask, so what happened when you turned 40? How did you end up finally receiving the diagnosis?
So my birthday is in November, and a few weeks before my birthday, I had noticed that my eyes were a little jaundiced. I just kind of ignored it. I had a pain in my side, like my upper right-hand side. I just kind of ignored it because I'm a mom and I have things to do. I was really tired. Again, the pain.
Mm-hmm.
Also, way back when in 2010, I got thrown off a motorcycle. So I kind of have some lingering aches and pains. I broke my neck. I broke my back in a
gosh.
couple places. They put my
Wow.
forearm back together. So, like, pain is just kind of something that I live with on a day-to-day basis. So for me, I was like, oh, well, everything's fine. Thanksgiving morning of 2023, I got up and the pain is so sharp in my side. I'm like bent over on the counter, trying to like hold it together. My husband keeps looking at me. He's like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm fine. This is fine. I'm going to go take a shower. And I literally go from my shower to the bed. I didn't even dry off. I didn't grab a towel. I couldn't stand up. I'm like ready to throw up. The pain is so bad. And he was like, I really want to take you to the emergency room. Like, you're scaring me. At this point, I'm kind of scared too.
Mm-hmm.
So I give my daughter a hug and I'm like, I'm just going to go to the emergency room. We get there and they do the ultrasound of my gallbladder. Gallbladder looks great. Liver enzymes off the charts. They have no idea what's going on. So they admit me.
Yeah.
So I spent from Thanksgiving Day until December 1st at my local hospital where I live. They decided it was out of their scope. I would be better suited in a large hospital in Boston because Boston's not far away from us, thankfully. So they reached out to Tufts Medical Center. They have a very, very good liver team there. And so they transferred me to Tufts Medical Center to be able to do a biopsy.
Mm-hmm.
They do the biopsy. Later that evening, the biopsy sites that they did started to bleed and I was bleeding out internally. My nurse is telling me stuff and I'm like, I don't understand what you're saying. Can you call my husband? And my husband's like crying on the phone because he thinks I'm dying, which kind of in a way I was.
So he's at home with your daughter. He's terrified. You're not sure what's going on. He's not sure what's going on.
Yes. They're pumping me full of meds. They get me down into CT, realize I'm bleeding internally. Thankfully, it stopped itself. So I didn't need any surgery. Definitely had, I think, 3 or 4 bags of blood
Oh, God.
to kind of like replenish what had bled out.
So I think it's important to know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ashley, but when the liver is not functioning, our blood does not clot. So our liver is responsible for helping with clotting. So it's very easy when your liver's not working to have hemorrhaging and
Yep.
lots of bleeding.
Yes, that's very true. And so obviously that's what was happening. Thankfully, it resolved itself. And the only thing they really saw in the biopsy at the time was a lot of fibrosis. I had very scarred, like level 4 cirrhosis. So then it was a ton of questions of, are you a drinker? What kind of lifestyle do you live? I'm a very boring person. My husband calls me president of the No Fun Club. I'm not a big drinker. When I would drink, it would be like a beer, and I'm like ready to go to bed.
So the cirrhosis of your liver was not caused by alcohol.
Correct. It was not caused by alcohol. It was not caused by medication. It was not caused by anything other than porphyria.
Mm-hmm. Is this when they discovered that you
Not
had?
yet. We're only halfway through this journey.
All right, keep going then. I don't want to stop you. So
No, that's okay. So Tufts Medical Center decided to put me on a liver transplant list because if anything, they knew that my liver was shot and I needed a new one. For anybody who has never been on a transplant waiting list, that comes with a whole lot of testing. They test everything, your heart, your lungs. You go through all kinds of imaging, stress tests, all kinds of stuff. Meanwhile, I'm still in excruciating pain. 10 is not even a big enough number to explain the level of pain that I'm in. To like, I'm not eating, I'm losing weight rapidly. They try to do like the feeding tube down my nose to try to get me nutrition because I couldn't hold anything down. And I honestly don't remember how it happened behind the scenes. But one of my liver doctors at Tufts knew of something happening at Mass General Hospital, MGH, potential some sort of liver involvement with this thing called porphyria. She had reached out to Dr. Karp, and at the time it was Dr. Dickey. She's since gotten married, and I mispronounce her last name wrong every time, so I just call her Dr. Amy. God love my husband. He's always my biggest advocate. He's the one that also started telling them when I'm having all these liver issues about my son's sensitivity. So they're asking questions. They're kind of looking into it. They reach out to MGH and somehow got a hold of Dr. Amy. Dr. Amy also has porphyria.
Oh, wow.
And as soon as she heard about it and heard about my son's sensitivity, that doctor sent her picture of one of my like sun rashes that I get. She was like, she has porphyria. She needs to be here.
No kidding.
Now we're in the middle of December 15th. So I'm still been hospitalized this whole time. MGH is on a do not transfer protocol, which means they were not accepting outside patients. I still don't know how she managed to do it or how many guardian angels I have. Within hours, I was transferred to MGH and admitted as a patient.
oh my goodness.
So it took a doctor with porphyria to diagnose you with porphyria.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Amy stayed late that day to make sure she was there to greet me when I got to MGH.
The doctor who had porphyria diagnosed you with porphyria, moved mountains, it sounds like, to be able to get you to MGH to receive either a liver transplant or to be treated. So let's hear what happens next.
I had never met anybody in my whole life who knew how hard it was just to exist day to day with the sunshine and how painful it was.
Aww.
It felt so validating to find somebody who was like me.
Yeah.
So when I got transferred to MGH, I didn't receive my medical diagnosis until genetically I actually had porphyria.
So how quickly did it take for you to get that genetic diagnosis?
So as soon as I got there, they essentially took the blood and immediately sent it out. Very beginning of January is when we got the test back.
Were you still in the hospital that entire time?
I sure was. From start to finish was 64 days inpatient. So once I finally got to Mass General, they were able to start treating me, helping me like with morphine and things like that. I started receiving infusions of heman, which is like this thick brown weird stuff that is like molasses in a bag.
Wow.
I had, I think, 5 rounds of that, lots of blood transfusions, some different medications that they had tried. There's a medication that they use for sickle cell that they had started me on to try and quiet my bone marrow because my bone marrow was in overdrive. So my bone marrow is where the porphyrins, I call them my ninjas. because they're just in there messing everything up, because it kind of felt like I was being stabbed by a machete. And then they decided that they wanted to try plasmapheresis.
Were they just providing you supportive care to wait until you had an organ?
Yes, they were also trying to jumpstart my liver again a little bit, hoping that maybe they could quiet the episode, because my ninja levels were off the charts. They were so high. I think they were just trying to help anything and everything. They were throwing the book at me. So the best part about being at MGH, not only the amazing medical care, I was on the 12th floor overlooking the Charles River. The view was gorgeous. So anyway, I had all these doctors at the foot of my bed trying to tell me about this plasmapheresis. And I happened to look out of the corner of my eye, and there's this beautiful rainbow. I'm like, excuse me, can you just hold, please? Stop talking. I need to take a picture of this rainbow outside. And they look at me like I have 12 heads. I hear you. You're trying to tell me really important stuff that's going to save my life, but this is a really pretty rainbow, and I want to take a picture of this.
Yeah.
So I just always felt like maybe it was a sign. I don't know. Like, here they are telling me about this really scary thing that I'm going to have to do, but it's okay, because like there's this beautiful rainbow outside. So I'm like, okay, well, let's do this plasmapheresis thing. So I go and I have to have a tunneled central line put in. Not a good time. Don't recommend. Really, all of my procedures, 0 stars. Don't recommend. Plasmapheresis was a game changer for me in all the best ways. Me and my friends and my husband, we call it my oil change, because I don't know if you've ever seen plasma. So plasma kind of looks like watered down lemonade. It's a yellow amber kind of very liquid. When they do plasmapheresis, they essentially take my blood out, spin it out the plasma, and then the new plasma in with my blood happens in this really cool machine. I got to see my plasma when it came out, and it looked like black sludge. I had to do 5 rounds of that, and the very first day after my first round of plasmapheresis, the pain had already started to subside that I was having in my side.
Oh my.
And my numbers started coming down, like to where they should.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Like almost instantly.
That's incredible.
And meanwhile, during this whole time, we closed on our first house, and our closing date was right at like Christmas time. So my husband did our closing of our house, packed up our apartment, moved everything into our new house, got my daughter to school every day, and never missed a day of seeing me in the hospital. I don't know how this man did it.
He loved you. That's how he did it. Love, the power of love, girl.
It's crazy. So once I had gone through the plasmapheresis and I was no longer dependent on IV pain medication, and we were trying to get me transferred over to like oral so I could go home, because a shocker, even though I had a great view, I really wanted to go home. I had been there long enough. So I came home on January 21st, still on the transplant list, obviously, but starting to feel a little bit better. We went twice a week to Boston. I had to continue with my heman infusions. So I was doing that twice a week. I honestly started feeling really good. Having a conversation with my husband, maybe I want to deactivate myself from the transplant list because my numbers are green. Like if you've ever had, your blood work done and they give you the little bar chart, and the numbers don't mean a lot to me, but if it's green and you're in the green zone, green is good.
Green is good.
And even though the damage was already there, my liver was shot, I was green and I was feeling good and I was back to like living life.
So you mean like all of your liver function numbers were back in the green, but they still kept you listed even though they were in the green?
Yes, because the cirrhosis of my liver it was still so bad.
You were starting to question the necessity of remaining on the transplant list.
Yeah, partially because I felt like if I was doing this well, I knew from doing research into liver transplants that there were people in ICU that may not wake up the next day because their liver was that bad.
Yeah, it's a tough road.
I felt guilty because I was also really scared about the prospects of a liver transplant. That's kind of a big deal.
It's a major surgery, a lot of involvement, you're back in the ICU, as you mentioned. Yeah, there is a lot you're agreeing to by accepting that new organ.
100%. And so We're sitting there talking about it. And I told him, I was like, I'm going to call them in the morning and I'm going to deactivate myself. We're still going to monitor the numbers. We're going to follow the numbers. If things start going bad again, then we will reactivate myself. So we went to bed knowing that decision. And at 4:00 in the morning, he agreed.
Was your daughter aware of this also? And
She knew what was going on.
she knew too. And she was supportive of that for mommy?
I didn't want her to ever be blindsided by something. We had actually sat here and made tie-dye pillowcases. So when mommy has her transplant surgery, I'll take my tie-dye pillowcase. She'll have her tie-dye pillowcase. Daddy will have his tie-dye pillowcase. So even though mommy wasn't home and we weren't sleeping, in the same house, we were still together because we all had our tie-dye pillowcases. So we go to bed thinking, I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'm going to call them and I'm going to deactivate myself and this is what we're going to do. And at 4:00 in the morning, I got a phone call.
At that same night?
Yes, ma'am. So it's like the universe was like, hold my beer. You're not done yet. 4:00 in the morning. So I didn't even have a chance to call and deactivate myself. The universe said, no, not today.
People can be on a wait list for a very long time. The organ transplant network, how I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ashley, they kind of rank people based on their severity and their ability to receive a potential organ. So this is all of the people in the United States. So your number was drawn.
My number was drawn. When I sit here and I think about just how all of it worked out, my physicians had to apply for additional points for my MELD score, which is what they use when you're being evaluated for a liver transplant. They applied for bonus points to increase my MELD score because all my levels had returned back to green. I didn't qualify for a liver transplant based on my current labs, but the underlying severity of my liver and knowing that the porphyria was still happening and still damaging the liver further, they were able to apply for these bonus points to increase my MELD score to get me higher up on the list.
Okay, so MELD score, just for our listeners, MELD stands for Model for End Stage Liver Disease. So it's a numerical scale ranging from 6 to 40 that estimates the severity of chronic liver disease.
Right.
And that does help to determine and prioritize transplantation.
Correct. And when you're on a transplant waiting list, you are never allowed to turn your phone off. And you are never allowed to be more than a few hours away from the hospital. And if you plan on being away from the hospital, you need to notify them and let them know. And this night, my phone's ringing, 4 a.m. I'm looking at it and it's like some weird, New Jersey number. And I'm like, oh no, oh no. And so I answer the phone. I'm like, hello. And she goes, this is so-and-so from the transplant, something. I don't even remember exactly what she said. She goes, how far away are you? How fast can you get to Boston? And I'm like, I don't know why. She goes, your liver's ready.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, what do you mean my liver's ready? I was going to call you and tell you I don't want one right now. And she goes, I have to read some disclosures to you. Are you awake enough? And I'm like, probably now. I don't know.
So this feeling of excitement and panic.
It was definitely panic. And at this point now, with all the trauma that my daughter was like going through at the time, she was now sleeping in bed with us. So at this point now, I'm sitting up, my daughter's right behind me, my husband's right behind her, and I'm talking to this lady on the phone, and I was like, okay. And I hung up the phone and I turned around and I'm like, it's go time. This is like one of those moments that get seared in your brain forever as a mom. I watched my daughter, who at the time was 9. She basically stood up and you could like watch her put on her armor, like hypothetically, stood up and she's like, okay, I'm going to go get my bag for Nana's. And she walked off. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. She never cried. I called my mother-in-law, which is Nana, and we called her and I'm like, we have to bring Evelyn over. It's go time. She's like, okay, I'm here. I'll be waiting for you. I went and took a shower. I knew it was going to be a while before I got to take a shower again. So I did the fastest everything shower I could have in my whole entire life, dropped her off and gave her a hug and a kiss, and was so terrified that that was going to be the last one. And it was the most silent hour-and-a-half ride to Boston with my husband in the car, because what do you even say? And so we drive to Boston and they have you check in and they take me back to the room and have me put the gown on, and I'm sitting there and it's time to go. Again, the panic set in and I gave my husband a hug and a kiss and I said, I love you. I'll always love you. And he said, okay. And I also told him he wasn't allowed to get remarried because I'd haunt him forever. And I remember remember them wheeling me into the operating room, and it's this giant room that's really cold, and there are a ton of people and like tables of instruments everywhere. So many people. MGH was really great. My doctors insisted they had to order special covers for the operating room lights because the wavelength that is emitted from the operating room lights can actually cause the reaction in my skin. So I had to have special filters on all of the operating room lights to make sure they didn't essentially burn me from the inside out.
That's so interesting, Ashley, because when you were describing the operating room and the experiences that I've had personally with myself and with my children in the operating room was how the smell is unique, but the
Yes.
brightness of the lights. And I was just thinking that, I'm like, how did you tolerate the brightness of the lights? So they were very thoughtful to keep you comfortable.
Safe enough for me.
Wow,
Yes.
that's incredible.
And so I remember they transfer you over to the table, and everybody in the world is talking. And I asked them, I was like, can we just wait a minute? I just wanted to take a second and recognize the fact that I'm about to potentially have this life-saving surgery because someone else is no longer here. And that's the reality that I think is almost one of the hardest things for me to deal with. I know that this organ came from someone that is about my son's age. So as a mom, I know that there was a mom grieving the loss of their child, friends leaving, grieving the loss of their friend. So that's a really tough pill to swallow.
Ooh.
But I also use it as motivation because I'm going to make sure that I honor that person by taking care of them, but also making sure that I tell the world about my story so that even though they aren't here to experience things, they're helping me change the world.
Whew. That is a story, Ashley. Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Let's fast forward to today. You've had your new organ, you've had your new liver for 2 years now?
We're about a month shy of 2 years.
How do you feel?
It's huge. It is really scary still. I think it's kind of just become my normal. Obviously there's medication every day, multiple times a day. That never goes away. Second breakfast is what we used to call it because it used to be like 30 pills in the morning, 30 pills at night. Second breakfast is definitely diminished quite a bit. So it's really only a few pills in the morning and at night. So love that for me.
That's wonderful.
It's a lot less time at the doctor's. I actually went last week.
Yeah.
And I met with my liver team where they told me they don't have to see me again for another year.
Woo woo.
They are very happy. We've had some hiccups along the way for sure. There was a readmission and there was, a bout of the stomach flu that had me back in the ER because I couldn't hold anything down, including my meds. That's kind of a problem when you need to take anti-rejection meds and you can't. It's the game that we play is still there because getting a liver transplant did not cure my porphyria. I still have porphyria and my body is still creating ninjas, and those ninjas are still attacking this new liver. So our game plan right now that would cure potentially, and I use that air quote cure, my EPP porphyria is a bone marrow transplant. That is not a road I would like to pursue at this time. That is a very huge risk. We call it kind of like dropping the nuclear bomb because there's no coming back from that. That would be 6 weeks of inpatient in an isolation unit and chemo and radiation and all kinds of things that I just don't want to do right now. Yeah. So on paper, my liver may be functioning well, but we don't know what those ninjas are doing to the tissue unless we're looking at the tissue. I think the game plan is probably to do another repeat biopsy later in the summer and compare, what it looked like right after transplant, because if the damage is starting to get more prevalent, I may not have an option other than to go through with bone marrow transplant.
That makes sense. So right now, there are options, but there remains the risk that this new liver could in fact become damaged once again.
Yes, very much so.
When you think about the future now, your family's future, does this experience change that for you?
Yeah, we're here for a good time, not a long time. Before that, I always kind of had the mindset of like, oh, we'll do that later. We'll go to Disney later. We'll go when the time is better. There is no better time. we're here today. We're here for a good time. I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I hope for a very long time. I'm not going to lie. I got a lot of people to talk to. Still, I have a lot of information to share and things to do. I have a lot to do. I have to have time to do it. But it is kind of a wake-up call that you don't know what tomorrow's going to be. That's been my new motto, is we're here for a good time, not a long time.
Well, we are incredibly grateful that you chose to spend some time talking with us today.
I'm just grateful for the opportunity to talk about it and share it, because you don't know what you don't know. I do know now. One of my dance mom friends, because my daughter dances, and there's a lot of dance moms, oddly enough, that work in the medical industry, nurses, in doctors' offices, in the medical space. And I walked into dance a couple weeks ago, and she comes running up to me. She goes, "Oh my gosh, Ashley, you're never going to believe this." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what?" She goes, "So I was helping a doctor with surgery today, and there was a girl talking about how she thinks she has porphyria, and I threw everything down on the ground." She's like, "I know about that. I know somebody with that. I know about that." And they had like this big old conversation, and she was able to tell her about some of the organizations that I've worked with, or my doctors, or where I've been, and was able to make that happen. But if I didn't tell my story, she wouldn't have been able to help that person.
Aw. So just like organ donors give life,
Yes.
you sharing your story gives wisdom
Yes.
to others and helps people in the future.
If I can help one person not have to experience what I've gone through, or at least give somebody the knowledge to figure something out sooner, then I did my job. You know, if it just means helping one child not have to live in the shadows.
Mandy, I was really moved by this conversation with Ashley for many reasons. I guess, first of all, how long it took for her to get a diagnosis until she's 40 and living with this condition without it ever being named. It's shocking. You know, we talk about the diagnostic journey in rare diseases, but this is really extreme. Even if there is no available treatment, to at least know what is happening and what you might be able to do to take care of yourself. The other part of her story, which is so dramatic, is needing a liver transplant. And really, you know, it is serious surgery. It stays with me about her kissing her husband goodbye beforehand and not knowing if that was going to be the last time.
When Ashley says she wants to help others avoid living in the shadows, she means that literally and figuratively, hoping these children and these people living with EPP can come out of the shadows and live an improved life.
As she says, she's here for a good time, not necessarily for a long time. That is very moving and profound, and what someone with EPP faces.
Thank you, David. A very special thanks to Ashley for helping us better understand EPP, and to Pete for helping educate us on the science of this condition. A special thanks to our producer, Amy Brooks. To learn more about EPP, visit shadowjumpers.org or the United Porphyrias Association. If you like this podcast, please subscribe. And if you have any comments, suggestions, or questions, write to us at onrare@bridgebio.com. Thank you for listening, and please join us for our next conversation on Rare.